Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network Novel. Ancient Sword and Immortal Sword. Days when Qionghua Sect was in charge, Wenlan has traveled to a world where the fusion of immortal swords and ancient swords takes place. Becoming the grandson of Elder Chongguang of the Qionghua Sect. How did he, who originally only wanted to cultivate immortality and grow, become a leader from selling grilled meat? Plot sequence. Xianjian 4. Ancient Sword 2. Ancient Sword 1. Xianjian 3. Xianjian 3 Outer. Xianjian 1. Xianjian 2. Xianjian 5 Prequel. Ancient Sword 3 sequenceFeilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 001. Is Chongguang my uncle and grandpa? You are listening at novelfull.audio. You said my grandmother is your sister. Yes. So my grandfather is your brother. In law. Yes. So my dad is your nephew. Yes. Are you a fool? Yeah. Ah bah. What are you talking about, kid? In a backward village, a 5-year-old child and a young man who appeared to be in his 20s stood in front of a thatched cottage. Many villagers around stood around pointing at the two people. The child has black hair and is dressed in linen clothes. He is a bit baby fat, but his eyes are bright and lively. The young man has white hair and looks very noble wearing a white robe. His face is young without any wrinkles, but he doesn't look easy to get along with on the outside. You look about the same age as my dad. You say you're my grandmother's brother, and I say I'm your ancestor. Wenlan didn't hesitate, glanced at the heavy light with an idiot-like expression on her face, then turned her head and walked into the room, muttering, "It's really unlucky to wake up in the morning and encounter a mental disability. Stinky kid. Stop me." Chongguang, who had always been known for his cold words, finally broke through and kicked Wenlan's butt. Oh my God. Wenlan didn't stand firm and fell to the ground. What's wrong with you? Wenlan stood up and glared angrily at Chongguang. You're already a senior at a young age, and you're not afraid of losing your life. Be careful not to let a lightning strike your grandson. Boom. Suddenly, a muffled thunder appeared in the clear sky, and Wenlan looked at the sky in surprise. I'm going. Is this world so beautiful? Is Chongda really struck by lightning? However, Wenlan couldn't help but get angry when she saw Chongguang's confident and fearless expression on her face. She pointed at Chongguang and said, "Did you see that? The sky thunder is brewing, and in a moment, the sky thunder will come down and chop you into pieces of ash." Really? Chongguang sneered coldly. Click, suddenly, a thunderbolt sounded, rubbing against Wenlan's nose and landing in front of him. Wenlan looked ahead in a daze. Just now, he clearly saw the lightning in front of him, with a white and purple hue in the lightning. Swallowing, I swallowed my saliva with difficulty and slowly lowered my head. I saw a small black pit about 1 centimeter in front of my toes being struck by lightning, because wearing grass shoes can clearly feel the heat in the pit. Son of a bitch, there is a rumor that Tianlei struck unfilial people. Who did you say Tianlei struck just now? The heavy light and cold voice sounded. Uncle and Grandpa. You are my own uncle and grandpa. Wenlan slipped one knee directly in front of Chongguang and hugged Chongguang's thigh, crying and shouting, "Uncle and Grandpa, I have found you. My parents died before I was born. You can't let the thunder strike me to death." Chongguang looked quietly at Wenlan holding her thigh, thunder but not rain, howling but not tears, and said softly, "Your parents died before you were born. How did you come out?" Hey. Wenlan suddenly became confused, her eyes turned and she continued to cry, "My mother was pregnant in October but died in July. I was gouged out of my mother's belly by a neighbor. If it weren't for my hard life, how could you still see me, uncle and grandpa?" But as far as I know, your mother must have contracted a serious illness last year and left with your father, right? Wenlan's crying suddenly came to an end once again. She silently let go of the heavy light on her thighs, stood up and calmly slapped the dirt on her pants, revealing her triangular eyes and saying, I can be sure, you absolutely have no friends. You are not worthy of being someone who exposes people's shortcomings. Is that right? Chongguang looked at the dilapidated thatched cottage with a hint of sadness on his face, looked around, and asked, is there only one person living here? Wenlan looked at Chongguang with a strange frown and said, at a young age, your eyes won't work well. She pointed to the villagers beside her and said, so many people can't see. Chongguang's sad mood relaxed, and his hand, which was originally behind him, suddenly clenched, as if he wanted to punch Wenlan to death. I mean you're the only one in this family. Chongguang asked coldly, suppressing his anger. Your eyes are really not working well. Is there anyone else in this room? Wenlan pointed to the open door and said, besides, you know my parents left last year and still ask. Humph, how can my younger sister's descendants be so infuriating? Chongguang glared at Wenlan and said, my name is Chongguang, and I am an elder of the Qionghua Sect. How dare you speak to me like that? Otherwise, just pretend to be a senior when you meet and kick me. Do I need to be polite to you? Chongguang sighed for a moment and said, well, is this guy interested in cultivating immortals? Wenlan looked at Chongguang in shock and said, cultivate immortality. Although Wenlan was born in this world in October when his mother was pregnant, his soul is a traveler of the 21st century. As for the reasons for traveling, it doesn't matter, it's not important. Xianjian, these two words have been heard a lot in his past life. He came with a sword and returned with the wind. This is a boy's lifelong dream. Not bad, the Qionghua Sect is located in one of the 8 sects of Kunlun Mountain, and is closest to the summit of Kunlun Mountain along with Tianyong City. Although cultivating immortality is tempting, life is even more precious. Wenlan remained vigilant as she looked at Chongguang and said, what are your intentions towards me? My parents are gone, and you don't want an organ dealer, do you? Chongguang, who usually has a cold and stern personality, really can't help but beat up this child, poking himself in the lungs with every word. I'm just looking at you pitifully. You're the only one left in my sister's family, of course I have to take good care of you. Oh. Are you infertile? That's why you want to adopt a child. It's okay, to be frank, it's not embarrassing. I am also very happy to live in a different environment. Creaking, Chongguang's forehead seemed to have a, well, and the bone clenched in his right hand made a sound. He looked at Wenlan with suppressed anger and said, you just say you can't go. Wenlan thought about it and realized that she didn't have any worries in this world anymore. How could it be cost-effective to trade her life for a path of cultivation? Okay. I'll go. Let's go then. Chongguang didn't give Wenlan a chance to react at all. He grabbed Wenlan's clothes with his left hand and stepped onto the ground with his right foot, soaring into the air. Wenlan only felt her eyes flicker, and the next second she was already in a 1,000-mile high altitude. Chongguang stood in front of her, with a sword at her feet. Damn it! Flying with a sword. Wenlan's eyes lit up, and as she looked down, she found that there were clouds all over her feet, making it impossible to see the scenery below. Senior, As Wenlan was about to speak, Chongguang frowned impatiently and pinched the formula with her right hand. Wenlan felt like her mouth couldn't open. Wenlan wiped her mouth and pinched her upper and lower lips in disbelief, trying to break them open, but found it futile. Bully! Wenlan exclaimed in her heart, and when she saw Chongguang not wanting to speak, she simply sat on the sword and curiously looked around. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 002. Elder Qingyang. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. For about 2 hours, Wenlan felt that the scenery below was no longer clouds, but rather some towns. Gradually, she saw a sky full of yellow sand, with many oases in the sand. Soon, Wenlan saw a mountain divided into 3 seasons. At the foot of the mountain is spring, on the mountainside is autumn, and on the mountaintop is winter. Combined with the summer in the desert not far from the mountain, it happens to be the 4 seasons. The imperial sword fell, and a magnificent mountain gate appeared at present. Behind the gate, pavilions and towers were faintly visible, exuding a fairy-like aura. Above the huge mountain gate is written, Kunlun Qionghua Sect. The 5 words were not written, but carved with sharp tools. It can be seen that these 5 words have a hidden killing intent, but they are also very kind. Wenlan hugged her shoulders with both hands, trembling with cold. After all, it was the icy winter in the path of Tai Shen behind her. At the mountain gate, 2 disciples were guarding the gate. When they saw Chongguang, they quickly stepped forward and bowed, saying, "See Elder Chongguang." Chongguang nodded and said to Wenlan behind him, "Follow me." Wenlan had just walked into the mountain gate, and in an instant, he felt a warm sensation rushing towards his face, allowing him to comfortably release his furrowed brow. "Who?" Wenlan couldn't help but let out a soothing voice. Chongguang led Wenlan to a teleportation array on the right side of the gate. Chongguang reached out and grabbed Wenlan's arm, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Tai Palace." Wenlan only felt a flash in front of her, and then she spun around, feeling dizzy and nauseous, which pounded her brain. Ouch! In the morning, eating congee spurted out of his mouth, and the heavy light quickly withdrew from his body. "No. I'm sorry. A bit nauseous." Wenlan squatted on the ground and said, halfway through, she vomited again. The originally clean teleportation array was full of filth. Chongguang's mouth twitched as he looked at the messy teleportation array. He didn't know for a moment whether it was right or wrong to bring this child back. "It's okay." The heavy light waved its hand, and a clear breeze blew past. The dirt on the ground left with the wind, and the teleportation array became clean again. Wenlan couldn't help but be taken aback when she saw this scene, and then muttered softly, "The spell is so effective. You don't have to tidy up the house anymore." "Humph, come with me." Chongguang walked forward with a cold snort. Wenlan followed behind and looked around. Occasionally, someone wielding a sword flew by in the air, but for some reason, the sword wielders deliberately bypassed the position of Tai Palace. Not far inside, I saw an old man wearing the same Taoist robe as Chongguang sitting at a stone table sipping tea. This person's beard is about to fall to the ground, but he looks very young, with bright eyes. Although his beard is long, it is not messy. "Chongguang, what have you been doing these days? You left just as the mountain lockdown was lifted." The old man couldn't help but ask when he saw Chongguang coming with a child. "I went to see Fan Chen's home." Chongguang took Wenlan to the stone table and said to Wenlan, "This is also an elder of our sect, with the Taoist name Qingyang." "Oh. Qingyang immortal." Wenlan quickly bowed. Compared to the always angry heavy light, the Qingyang in front of him was very kind, making people involuntarily feel very friendly to him. If Chongguang heard Wenlan's voice, he would definitely go straight for a big fight. He has such a cold and aloof personality that he has been broken several times by the kid in front of him. "So this young man is a descendant of your family?" "Well, my sister's child is the only one left in the family, so I decided to bring him over." "Come on, little one, let me take a look at you." Qingyang smiled kindly at Wenlan and waved his hand to signal his arrival. Wenlan quickly stepped forward, and Qingyang grabbed Wenlan's wrist and closed her eyes. However, Wenlan felt a warm current flowing into her body from Qingyang's hand, slowly enveloping her whole body. Wenlan couldn't help but squint her eyes and let out a moan. Upon hearing Wenlan's moans, Qingyang couldn't help but open his eyes and glanced at Chongguang to see their surprise. Hey! Why isn't it gone? Wenlan felt the warm current circulating in her body disappear for a moment, and opened her eyes in confusion. Can you feel the true qi? Is it that warm thing? But his ability to feel the flow of true qi at the first moment is enough to indicate his good aptitude, Chongguang said. And the root bone is also of the highest quality. It can be said that he has the same good qualifications as Xianxiao, but unfortunately he was not born during the Yin year, Yin month, Yin day, Yin hour. Otherwise, compared to Suyu Wangshu sword, it would be more suitable for him. Little one, you have a good spiritual foundation. What do you want to learn? Qingyang stroked his beard and asked. What are they all about? That's a lot, including martial arts, elixirs, talismans, immortal techniques, sword casting, and so on. But I suggest you learn how to cast swords. Forging a sword. Wenlan was a bit puzzled. His original intention was to learn martial arts and immortal techniques, because fighting is what men love. Not bad, you are very sensitive to the perception of true qi. During forging, you can effectively perceive impurities and control fire inside the sword. In addition, your bones are excellent, allowing you to cultivate true qi inside and temper muscles and bones outside. It will be very beneficial for you in the future. Can you learn anything else about forging swords? Of course you can. Wenlan hesitated a bit and asked cautiously, can I take a look first before making a decision? Of course you can. What else would you choose? It's great to forge a sword. Chongguang frowned on the side. This stinky guy almost killed himself just now, and now he wants to learn something else. Let him go forge iron to exhaust him. Hey! You're still my uncle and grandfather, why don't you think carefully for your grandson? If I'm not suitable for forging swords, wouldn't my bones be wasted? Alright, Chongguang, let him take a look. Qingyang was still very kind, but the other elders are currently not in the sect. I can take you to see the disciples' cultivation. Okay. Qingyang and Chongguang stood up and walked to the teleportation array, and Wenlan hesitated as she looked at the teleportation array. What's wrong? Qingyang asked softly. Wenlan said awkwardly, Senior. Can we walk? I'm dizzy from the teleportation array. Oh, yes. The disciples who used it for the first time are not used to it, so let's go with the sword. Qingyang grabbed Wenlan's wrist and wielded the sword, arriving at Jinwuping. Let's go see Dan Fong first. Qingyang brought Wenlan to the Dan room, with Chongguang following behind. As soon as Wenlan entered the house, she felt a faint coolness sweeping her whole body, like entering an air-conditioned room in summer, very comfortable. Elder Qingyang, Elder Chongguang. The disciples inside the room quickly stood up and bowed to the two elders. It's okay, let's just take a look. Qingyang waved his hand. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 003. Apprenticeship and Training. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wenlan looked around curiously, and the slightly cool room had a less pungent herbal smell, making it a very comfortable place. A disciple sat cross-legged on a futon, facing a one-person tall alchemy furnace, with a blazing fire burning herbs inside. The herbs slowly dissipated under the scorching fire, but did not become ashes. Instead, they became liquid floating in the alchemy. The disciple quickly threw several herbs into the alchemy again, and the herbs slowly merged after forming a liquid in the scorching fire. Merge into a circular shape at a speed visible to the naked eye and become a solid. However, the heavy light standing not far from the door glanced at Wenlan, and the hand inside the wide robe and sleeves became a sword finger. A hidden and difficult to detect true qi quickly flew into the alchemy furnace. Although it was difficult to detect these disciples, Qingyang was very sensitive and looked at Chongguang in surprise. After the true qi entered the alchemy began to tremble. The disciple was surprised and stretched out his palms to control the fire inside the alchemy. But the trembling of the Danlu became increasingly intense, and even cracks appeared on the Danlu. Wenlan looked at this scene in shock. "No, we're going to blow up the furnace." The disciple exclaimed in fear and quickly lifted the elixir from a distance with true qi, throwing it out of the room through the door. Danlu flew out of the room and into the air. Bang! A deafening explosion echoed through the entire Jinwuping, and even Wenlan could feel a sudden tremble on the ground. Wenlan stared at the explosion in the air and said, "I'm a mother. This is Mother Stove. This is Mother Missile. It's too dangerous, too dangerous. How about it? Do we need to learn alchemy?" A faint smile appeared on Chongguang's cold face. Wenlan shook her head repeatedly and said, "It's too dangerous. Don't learn, don't learn. Let's take a look at the next item." Qingyang seemed to understand Chongguang's idea and took it directly to the beginner's training place. Qingyang originally thought that Chongguang was for the safety of his younger generation and did not want his sister's only child to be in danger. However, he didn't know that Chongguang was just seeking revenge to make this stinky guy endure hardship. Arriving at a remote place on Jinwuping, several disciples were practicing sword qi. Every time they swung their swords, they could see a transparent sword qi detaching from the sword body. Even some disciples have their swords detached from their palms and freely controlled. Wow! Wenlan's eyes widened as tears involuntarily flowed from the corners of her mouth. Suck in. Wenlan wiped her saliva. This is the romance of a man. However, Chongguang seemed to see Wenlan's thoughts and once again exerted his true energy. A disciple happened to wield his sword and control the floating sword back into the sheath of his left hand. Just as the flying sword was about to enter the scabbard, it was suddenly hit by the true energy of the heavy light. The sword deviated slightly from the lower part between the disciple's legs and struck the ground between the disciple's legs. Suck. Wenlan was so scared that she couldn't help but cover her crotch with both hands and took a cold breath. "I'm a mother, I almost lost my children and grandchildren. I almost went from a senior brother to a senior sister. Is the imperial sword so dangerous?" Wenlan swallowed her saliva and said, "I'm here to learn the imperial sword, not the demon-repellent sword manual. For the sake of my future generations and grandchildren, let's forget it." And the disciple also turned pale with fear, sitting limply on the ground, looking at the sword less than 5 centimeters away from his little brother with fear. Tear and pull, due to the sword being too sharp, the crotch of the disciple's pants only tore open when the disciple moved. "Little one, are you still watching? Actually, forging a sword is the safest." Qingyang stroked his beard and asked. "Forge a sword? I'll learn how to forge a sword. I'm in a hurry with anyone who stops me." Wenlan quickly spoke up. Upon hearing Wenlan's words, Chongguang couldn't help but curl his lips and say, "Humph, little rabbit, fight me, play with you to death." Well, it seems that there is only one disciple under the sect of sword casting, right? Qingyang looked at Chongguang. Chongguang nodded, although he really wanted this brat to suffer, at the very least he needed to have the ability to protect himself. It's not enough to just find a master. But that disciple has average qualifications and is not capable of taking on a major task, Chongguang said. Then let him directly worship under the sect's refining sect. Can. Before Wenlan could react, the two of them took Wenlan back to the Tai Palace and shouted outside a room, "Zonglian, are you there?" The door opened, revealing a head full of white hair and white whiskers. At first glance, he looked like a meticulous old man. Zonglian was puzzled and asked, "Why are you two old guys here? What's going on?" A few days ago, Chongguang went back to Fan Chen's home and found that the only one left in the family was this single seedling, so he brought it back to the Qionghua sect. The two of us have found that our qualifications are good, and this kid likes to forge swords, so we must forge swords. So we want you to join our team, oh. Zhonglian raised his eyebrows, and although the sword-casting profession was glorious, few disciples would choose it. Swordsmiths can be respected by others wherever they go, but becoming a master is not an easy task. Moreover, in order to learn other spells, one must excel in the art of sword casting, which makes many disciples unwilling to touch the art of sword casting. What's your name? Zhonglian looked at Wenlan and asked. If I go back to my senior, my name is Wenlan, Wenlan said with a bow. This is my future master, Wenlan is very polite. What if I wear small shoes for myself in the future? Well, polite, not bad. Zhonglian stepped forward and placed his hand on Wenlan's shoulder, and his true energy flowed into Wenlan's body to begin exploring. Does the old man not even believe what we say? Chongguang said, this kid can keenly perceive true qi when Qingyang shows him the root bones. Oh. Zhonglian was a bit surprised because he had just surveyed and found that the young man in front of him had no trace of true qi in his body, and even his bones had not been refined. However, being able to feel true qi for the first time was even more precious. You have good qualifications and excellent bones. Wenlan, are you willing to join my sect? Master, please accept my disciples' worship. Wenlan quickly knelt down and kowtowed. Well, not bad. Zhonglian nodded satisfactorily and said, the elders and disciples of the sect, male, are all Shen characters, and female are all Su characters. Just take one character from your name, and in the future, your Taoist name will be called Xianlan. Thank you, Master. Wenlan kowtowed again. At this moment, Chongguang on the side spoke to Zhonglian and said, Old man, don't let him go lightly just because he is my junior. Practice him hard. Practice him hard. As long as you don't die, practice to the death. Zhonglian, who was originally satisfied, suddenly froze and looked at Chongguang in surprise. His eyes were full of questions. Is this your junior? So ruthless. Speaking of which, he didn't pass through the moment illusion, did he? Zhonglian suddenly asked. He is young and weak now, let him go when he reaches the qi refining stage. Qingyang stroked his beard and said. Well, it's possible, Zhonglian nodded and said. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 004. Su Shen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, Zhonglian did not care about Chongguang's words. After all, forging a sword is not an easy task, and the foundation must be well established. At this moment, blue light flashed from the teleportation array, and a woman walked over from it. The girl is tall and has lively eyes, and is very beautiful. Her black hair is curled behind her head, and a strand of hair partially covers her left face. Disciple Su Shen, see the three elders. A woman named Su Shen saluted. What's going on? Qingyang asked. Master asked the elders to come over, and Elder Wei is already there. Well, I see. Qingyang nodded and said. Su Xin, Zhonglian said. The disciple is here. This is my newly recruited disciple, whose Taoist name is Xianlan. He will be your junior brother from now on. Take him to Jianwu Ping to collect the necessary items for entry and find a room for him to live in. Yes, I obey. Xianlan, come here tomorrow at Xianxia to find me. Yes, I obey your orders, Wenlan replied, learning from Su Shen's courtesy. Wenlan had just finished speaking, and the three of them left Tai Palace with their swords. Ha! It's finally over, I'm so nervous. Su Shen saw the elders leave and breathed a sigh of relief, then curiously looked at Wenlan and said, Are you my junior brother? you're quite cute. He pinched Wenlan's face. Hiss. It hurts. Wenlan patted Su Shen's hand in dissatisfaction and rubbed her face. Let's go, take you to meet other senior brothers and sisters. The two of them walked up to the teleportation formation, and Su Shen stood up and looked at Wenlan below in confusion, asking, come up. Wenlan said awkwardly, senior sister. Can we walk? I'm dizzy from the teleportation array. Alright, Su Shen walked off the teleportation array and the two of them walked towards the nearby bridge. Walking straight on the bridge in Tai Palace shocked Wenlan greatly, because from the side of the bridge, one can only see clouds and endless mountains. And from time to time, cranes and birds fly by, and a waterfall flows straight down from above because the clouds cover it as if the waterfall is flowing from the sky. Wow! Even Wenlan, who had seen the world in her past life, couldn't help but open her eyes at this moment. Su Shen waved his hand in boredom and saw a small jade bottle in his hand. He opened the stopper and took a sip, saying, you've been like this for the past few days. Even the best scenery in a while will be boring. What is eternal? The world is so vast that you can walk around freely, no matter where you go, you can find a place that makes you happy and shocked, even if it's only for a moment. Wenlan looked at the waterfall, reaching out her hand and feeling the cold drops of water dripping into her palm. I didn't expect you to have such insight at a young age, Su Shen raised her eyebrows and said. I'll just say it casually, Wenlan took a deep breath and suddenly sniffed it carefully. Following the taste, she looked over and said, wine. Su Shen looked at Wenlan 5 meters away in surprise, you can smell it so far. Dog nose. Hey. Senior sister, speak up and don't curse. Wenlan rolled her eyes and said. Hee, that's praising you. Che, praise people without good words. After admiring the waterfall, Wenlan continued to walk forward. Wenlan was at the same level as Su Shen and glanced at Su Shen's jade bottle, saying, senior sister, can we drink wine while cultivating immortals in the sect? Of course, having a low cultivation level is not enough. At the very least, you need to reach the golden elixir stage before you can drink alcohol. Jin Dan period. Wenlan was puzzled. Oh yes, you're just starting out and not sure yet. Let me explain it to you. The way to cultivate immortality is to use mind techniques to attract spiritual energy from heaven and earth into one's own body, and to use spiritual energy to strengthen oneself. By storing true qi in your dantian area, you can officially enter the path of cultivation, which also has levels. They are gas refining period, foundation building period, fusion period, golden pill period, primordial baby period, exorcism period, distraction period, and combination period. Each episode will be divided into early, mid, late, peak, or in other words, complete. When you break through the union period, you will cross the tribulation. If you successfully cross the tribulation, you will be promoted to a fairy, but if you fail, you will be completely defeated. It was so difficult in the early stage, Wenlan frowned slightly and thought for a moment. Then becoming a fairy should also have a level division, right? I remember the villagers once said something about wandering immortals. In fact, Xianxian was not said by the villagers, but by Wenlan's subconscious thoughts. Not bad, after becoming an immortal, your levels are divided into human immortal, earth immortal, heavenly immortal, golden immortal, refining void, and Mahayana. As for the scattered immortals you mentioned, they are immortals without heaven and earth deities, because the Shenzhou continent is so large and there are many forbidden areas where the divine race cannot intervene, resulting in a certain shrinkage of the Shenzhou continent. In addition, Mount Taishan Mountain, Kunlun Mountain and other places are dominated by more advanced immortals, which has shrunk again. The sea area is also managed by the dragon tribe, which means that the human race can only enjoy a small area. And the mountains, rivers, streams, and so on in this small area were all occupied by immortal cultivators who had become immortals in their early years. Xianxian is a fairy who has no territory and walks in the world. Only when the immortals in the imperial decree areas die or ascend due to uncontrollable factors, can it be the turn of scattered immortals to replace them and become the righteous gods. Oh, I understand. Wenlan nodded with a sudden realization. Simply put, the number of divine positions in the world is already full, and those who do not have a job are called scattered immortals. Only when someone with a job dies or is promoted can they be replaced by scattered immortals. What is the difference between a scattered immortal and a righteous god? They are not all immortals. It's different. Shen shook his head and said, although immortals have a long lifespan, there is still a great limit. To achieve permanent immortality, one needs to be promoted from an immortal to a god. The path of immortality is even more difficult than the path of human beings. In addition to exceptional qualifications and continuous cultivation, becoming a person requires the most important thing. Incense. Incense. Upon hearing this word, Wenlan stopped and could now be completely certain that this world was almost no different from the novels she had read in her previous life. Not bad. Incense requires the person offering it to sincerely offer incense in order to obtain it, and when the incense reaches a certain limit, it needs to cross the tribulation. This time crossing the tribulation is a test of heaven and earth whether you are qualified to become a god, and this kind of tribulation needs to be repeated 5 times before you can become a god. Isn't that right? Wenlan thought for a moment and said, there must be a special way to become a god, right? There are indeed many special methods to become gods, but these methods are rarely known. But these are not what you should be thinking at the moment. You can practice until the qi refining stage first. The two of them walked step by step to the Qionghua sword platform. As soon as they approached Wenlan, they felt a piercing coldness sweeping over them. Looking over, they found that the distant platform had already frozen, and there were even many icicles nearby. Hiss, it's so cold. Wenlan couldn't help but shudder as she gasped as she spoke. This is the Qionghua sword terrace, where disciples in the sect forge weapons. Shen waved her hand at Wenlan, who felt warm on her body. Thank you, senior sister. It's okay, Shen said as they walked forward. If you have nothing to do at night, you can come here and pick up some discarded and inferior weapons. Although it's not very good, it's enough for you, a newcomer. Senior uncle. Senior uncle. Master uncle. Shen's arrival made all disciples put down their work and salute Shen. Shen nodded and said, I'm just browsing around, you guys keep going. At this moment, Wenlan realized that the Qionghua sword platform not only had ice, but also hot magma, standing steadily in the form of a Tai Chi diagram. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 005. Introduction to Glass Triangle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let's go, there's the disciples' room ahead. Xianxian led Wenlan to the room at the edge of the disciples' room, pushed open the door, and inside sat a disciple. The disciple was sitting cross-legged on a futon practicing when he heard the commotion and opened his eyes. He saw Shen quickly stand up and salute, saying, Senior uncle. Well, you go measure his body size, get him a few Taoist robes, and some resources. Yes, the disciple looked up and down at Wenlan, nodded, and turned to enter the inner room. Shen said to Wenlan, disciples in the sect who have just started can receive 6 Taoist robes. Taoist robes are the lowest level of magical tools that can automatically regulate the temperature needed by the body. They will be neither hot nor cold in summer or winter, but only for this one purpose. Isn't it said that there are still clothes that won't get dirty? Wenlan asked in confusion. What you're talking about as avoiding dust, is a high-level Taoist robe, just like what I'm wearing, and it can withstand a single fusion strike. But this advanced Taoist robe requires true qi to be replenished at any time and is not suitable for beginners, so when you reach the foundation building period, you can collect it yourself. Oh, Wenlan suddenly realized and thought to herself, the novels I read in my past life really didn't deceive me. In addition to the Taoist robe, there are also 100 spirit stones as an introductory resource. Ordinary disciples can receive 80 spirit stones per month, while those like you who are a mysterious character can receive 300 spirit stones. The function of spirit stones can be used for trading in the world of cultivation, as well as to restore true qi and aid in cultivation. Of course, one can also exchange spirit stones for copper coins, silver bills used in the human world, and vice versa. Well, it sounds like the spirit stone is quite important. Why waste it in exchange for human money? Because when you go down the mountain to eliminate demons, the people you come into contact with the most are still ordinary people. You need to eat and rest. The human experience is already bitter enough, don't you want to eat something good? Shen chuckled. The disciple quickly walked out and handed a storage ring to Shen, saying, "Senior uncle, all the necessary items are inside." Shen took out a set of clothes and 20 spirit stones from the storage ring, then threw the storage ring, Taoist robe, and spirit stone to Wenlan and said, "After you cultivate true qi, you can use it by dripping blood to recognize the master." Okay. Wenlan put the ring on her finger, and the originally loose ring automatically contracted, making it a perfect fit to wear on her finger. "Let's go, take you to meet other senior brothers and sisters," she said as she walked out. "There are a total of 4 senior sisters and 4 senior brothers above you, including me. According to the entry time, they are Xianjian, Suyao, Xianxia, Xianqing, Sushi, Xianming, Suyu, and I. However, the difference is that except for Xianming, we are all disciples of the leader Tai Qinjian. Among the elders, only Zhonglian elder has disciples, which is Xianming. Now, we will add you. The leader has taken in so many disciples. Does he have no offspring?" Wenlan asked curiously. "As far as I know, what's wrong?" Shen asked in confusion. "I'll go. Those who cultivate immortals won't be able to give birth, will they?" Wenlan whispered with a twitch at the corner of her mouth. Pop. Shen couldn't help but laugh at this sentence and patted Wenlan's head, saying, "I'm quite young and have a lot of thoughts. Don't worry, cultivators can get married and have children, but Master and his team have always prioritized big things and don't care about these children's relationships." Wenlan pondered and asked softly, "Is it possible that they like men?" Shen widened her eyes and looked at Wenlan incredulously. "These are all words of a tiger or wolf, are they what you, as a child, should say?" Ha. Bastard. You're actually discussing the sect leader behind your back. Who's your disciple from? Accompanied by hearty laughter and cold scolding, the two turned around and saw 2 men and a woman standing not far away. The man on the left has a face full of anger, but he is very handsome with a red mark on his eyebrows, making him cold and difficult to get along with. The man on the right is also very handsome, but from his cheerful laughter, you can tell that he is very easygoing and looks very easygoing. There stood a woman between the two, with a beautiful face but a cold expression. Although her eyes were clear and intelligent, there was also a feeling of seeing through the world. Ha, senior brother, this little guy is so interesting. Let him say something I haven't dared to say in all these years. Yun Tianqing, I advise you to work hard, otherwise you are wasting your qualifications. The man on the left glared angrily at Yun Tianqing and shouted softly. Senior brother Xianxiao, senior brother Tianqing, senior sister Suyu. Shen walked up and smiled, these are the disciples of Elder Zhonglian who have just started. Wenlan stepped forward and said, Hello senior brothers and sisters, my name is Wenlan. Hello. Suyu nodded slightly, making a soft voice in her mouth, but it could be seen that there was no ripple in her eyes. Hello junior brother, my name is Yun Tianqing. As soon as I see your personality, we can get along well. Let's communicate better in the future. Yun Tianqing crouched down and reached out his arm to put it on Wenlan's shoulder, smiling. Okay, in the future, I will be bullied inside the door. Senior brother, you have to help me. That's necessary. Don't worry, junior brother. No matter what happens in the sect, I'll keep you safe. At most, you can go to Siwigu and starve for a few days. It's okay. Yun Tianqing, you are too mischievous. The law inside the door is being played so foolishly by you, Xianxiao frowned. Oh, senior brother, don't keep your face so straight. It's meaningless. Although we may live a long life as immortals, there will always be a deadline. Only by enjoying life and death can we have no regrets. If you have a worried face every day, then you are living and suffering. Wenlan nodded in agreement and said, that's right. People are born crying and come to this world. Why? Because the world is hell. Can you come to hell without crying? If you're not happy in this world, what's the point of living? Just go to the Yanwang Palace and report directly. Junior brother, you can't say that. With so many beautiful mountains, rivers, landscapes, interesting things, and delicious food in the world, how can we call it hell? Why is the most severe punishment for immortals to be demoted to the mortal world? Omega, Omega. Omega, Omega. Omega, Omega. Omega, Omega. Yun Tianqing and the four of them looked at Wenlan in shock. Even Xianxiao, who was originally serious, looked at Wenlan in confusion. I'm Chao. It makes sense. Yun Tianqing blurted out a rude sentence. Sigh. Shen silently covered his forehead. This was the second time he had been made unable to speak by this little guy. And senior brother didn't say much. There are so many beautiful girls. For example, the two senior sisters are very beautiful. Wenlan smiled and said. At this moment, Suyu also regained her senses and gave Wenlan a deep glance. Then she shook her head and said, her appearance is beautiful and ugly, all of her bones are under her skin. What's the difference between her appearance, voice, and color? I can't say that, senior sister. Would you be willing to give you a dirty homeless man to become your husband? Wenlan shook her head and said. Suyu was stunned again. You see, you still don't want to. To put it simply, you're just in Versailles, knowing you're beautiful. Besides, what's wrong with subcutaneous white bones? I haven't looked at the bones yet. I have to look at the beautiful little sister every day, not for anything else, just for the sake of my happy mood. Everything is good when I'm in a good mood. Chapter 006. Major Injustices. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Anyway, my life motto is to be healthy and live a long life, smoke, drink alcohol, eat fat, stay up late without exercising, and make more friends with the opposite sex. This little guy. Shen held onto his forehead in silence. At first, when we met, he didn't feel like he was so bouncing off. I'm going to practice swordsmanship, Suyu said. After a while, I turned around and left. Humph. Xianxiao saw Suyu leave and let out a cold snort, shaking his sleeve and robe to leave. Little junior brother is really interesting. Why? Do you have any thoughts about the beautiful two senior sisters? Yun Tianqing smiled mischievously. Sushin's senior sister is fine, Suyu's senior sister forget it, it's not suitable for me, Wenlan shrugged. Hey! What's the little guy talking about? Shen rolled his eyes and poked Wenlan's forehead with his finger. You and senior brother Tianqing are so good. You two should sleep in the same room, he said before leaving. Well, little one, come on. I told you, I've been chasing Suyu for a long time, don't compete with me. No, but did you catch up? Wenlan asked curiously, gossiping. No, Yun Tianqing awkwardly scratched his head. Work hard. Wenlan reluctantly patted Yun Tianqing's shoulder. She had originally wanted to listen to gossip, but was a bit disappointed when she didn't listen. There is no grass in the world, why be in love with a single flower? That's not possible, I'll only take 1 scoop of the weak water of 3,000. Yun Tianqing said with a positive tone. What I'm saying is that if senior brother really can't catch up with women, let's try chasing men. Aren't the sect leaders and elders all single? If you think you succeed, then it's either the sect leader's wife or the elder's wife. Who wouldn't give you the whole sect? Damn it, don't you do it. Wenlan covered her buttocks and ran forward, while Yun Tianqing chased after her from behind. Little rabbit, please stop me. Look at me, I won't kill you. I am a disciple of Zhonglian Elder. If you want to kill me, you can see that Zhonglian Elder will not play with you. I will not let him kill you, but I will let him cut you. Let you and senior sister Suyu be sisters. Stop me. Bah. You think I'm stupid? Seeking fresh flowers. 10 minutes later, Wenlan covered her buttocks and lay on the ground, feeling helpless. Yun Tianqing hummed a tune and lay on the grass beside her, holding a dog-tail grass in her mouth. Pain, it hurts too much. I seem to understand Feilu a bit now. Wenlan rubbed her buttocks and grinned. Who is Feilu? Yun Tianqing looked at Wenlan in confusion. Oh, a big villain in an organization called League of Legends, his wife shouted to him before she died, Feilu, save me. Feilu worked tirelessly and painstakingly to become enemies with the world, successfully resurrecting his wife. As a result, his wife said, isn't it enough for me to love you until the last moment of my life? I'll go. It's so exciting. Come on, talk to me well. Yun Tianqing sat up and looked at Wenlan with his eyes lit up. Wenlan rolled her eyes as she looked at Yun Tianqing's expression and said, sure enough, watching the excitement and listening to gossip doesn't distinguish between dynasties. This is his mother's inherited nature. Goo, suddenly, Wenlan's stomach made a sound, which made her remember. It had been a long time since noon, and she had not eaten yet. Are you hungry? Well, I haven't had a meal yet and I've been chased by you again, Wenlan said, covering her stomach. Let's take you to the cafeteria for a meal. After dinner, please tell me about this big injustice. The two of them stood up and arrived at the cafeteria on the side of Jianwoping. At this time, there were not many people in the cafeteria, but many people were curious when they saw Wenlan, who was not wearing sect clothes. But when he saw Yun Tianqing, he quickly bowed and called him Shishu or even Shishu Zhu. Senior brother, I have come all the way to see many disciples in the sect. Why are there so few people in the cafeteria? Wenlan asked with some confusion. Because it happens to be lunchtime in this world, there aren't even 20 people in the cafeteria. Yun Tianqing explained, there are millions of paths in cultivating immortality, and they all end up in one place. So everyone's cultivation methods are different. For us cultivators, all things in the world, except for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, are debris and impurities, including ourselves. These impurities will block your muscles and prevent the increase or circulation of your true qi in your body. To make progress in cultivation and become an immortal, one needs to remove impurities from their body in order to increase our cultivation. So many people are learning to break through the valley. Pai Gu means eating the least amount of food in the longest possible time, rather than not eating anything at all. However, clearing the valley is not the only way, and you can also choose other ways to cultivate. As the saying goes, if the inner and outer world is quiet, the divine will calm down the qi. If the divine will calm down the qi, the original qi will come. If the original qi comes, the 5 internal organs will be smooth. If the 5 internal organs are smooth, the 100 meridians will spread. If the 100 meridians spread, the body's fluids will respond, without thinking about the 5 tastes of hunger and thirst, and the 3 fields will be forever cut off. If the Tao is completed, the body will be full of hidden essence, and the child's appearance will be youthful. Elder Chongguang obtained powerful cultivation from Pigu, and it can be seen that among the elders, Elder Chongguang is the youngest. Oh, it seems this road is not very suitable for me. Wenlan pursed her lips, saying that food is the top priority for the people. If they can't even eat food, what's the point of cultivating immortality? How old is Elder Chongguang? Wenlan asked curiously. He should be over 80 years old, right? He seems to be 30 years younger than the leader. Wenlan was somewhat shocked, but upon closer examination, it seemed that Chongguang was his grandmother's brother. It seemed not impossible. The two of them walked away as they talked, and came to the dining room. Wenlan just stood still and was stunned. Cabbage, tofu, mantou. Gone. I'll go. So vegetarian. It's not as good as what I ate at the foot of the mountain. Wenlan widened her eyes and couldn't believe it. Is that what Xianjian eats? Sure enough, we are very similar. It's the first time I've seen the same expression as you, Yun Tianqing said tearlessly. Actually, this is not the most tragic thing. The most tragic thing is that we have been eating these two dishes every day for decades, and they haven't changed. Wenlan's mouth twitched and said, "Let me be a mother. I know why so many people have gone through the same thing for so many years. If it were me, I would have gone through the same thing. That's what I said, but if I'm hungry, I should still eat." However, after taking a bite, Wenlan almost didn't spit it out. It's tasteless. Wenlan weakly said, "Is it a great sin to add salt to our dishes inside our door? Don't think about it, there's no seasoning in the door at all." Yun Tianqing looked at the food without any desire to move his chopsticks. Wenlan couldn't help but sigh as she looked at the food and said, "Making the grain that Uncle Farmer worked hard to grow so unpleasant, isn't he afraid of being punished by heaven? Ah, let's eat it." "If you don't eat this, what will you eat?" Yun Tianqing sighed and said with a worried expression. "I sat up in shock from my dying illness, and the clown turned out to be myself. I always thought Feilu was a big injustice, so I am." Chapter 007. Bell Sounds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After finishing their meal with difficulty, the two of them returned to their room, which happened to have two beds. Originally, senior brother Xianxia and I shared the same room, but later he and Suyu needed to go to the forbidden area to practice double swords and couldn't stay. Yun Tianqing thoughtfully tidied up Wenlan's bedding. "Wenlan wants to roast. Aren't you afraid that these two don't do something good? But I also think that ancient women placed great importance on chastity, and their tongues and lips were invisible swords for killing, so they couldn't just talk nonsense. Not to mention ancient times, even in the past and modern times, some rumors have caused many people to collapse and commit suicide. Senior brother, please call me at Xianxia tomorrow. Let me use this for you." Yun Tianqing took out a talisman and pasted it on Wenlan's bedside. He then cast a spell into the talisman with his right sword finger. This is a chime, which can automatically sound the bell after reaching a certain hour and only designated people can hear it. Alarm clock. Wenlan curiously looked at the talisman. What? Yun Tianqing looked at Wenlan in confusion. "Oh, it's nothing." Yun Tianqing shrugged and didn't ask much. Wenlan lay comfortably in bed and asked, "Senior brother, how long will it take for me to learn how to fly the imperial sword? If you can enter the qi refining stage, that's fine, but the specific way to teach depends on the sex refining elder. Without his authorization, we dare not teach privately. Because once there is a fork, it can cause damage to the muscles and veins, and in severe cases, it can lead to a sudden death due to being possessed by a demon so serious." Wenlan felt a bit resentful because he had initially planned to let Yun Tianqing teach him, but now it seems like he's better off. "Alright, I'll practice first. If you're bored, you can go out and explore. Okay. Wenlan didn't disturb Yun Tianqing's cross-legged cultivation anymore and planned to wander around. After all, this place is really beautiful. After taking off your clothes and putting them away in the wardrobe, put on the Taoist robe. When the disciples of the Qionghua sect first started, they only had a blue inner cedar, but when their cultivation increased, they would wear a white robe outside. No matter how high the level is, almost to the level of a martial uncle, an additional small vest will be added to the robe. The color of the vest is also determined by the level of cultivation, divided into two types. Blue and white. Wenlan is wearing a blue inner cedar, with a silk tapestry hanging on the left side of her waist. There is a piece of jade on the tapestry, engraved with the character Shen. Wenlan, who was already somewhat handsome, took off her coarse cloth clothes and changed into clothes, giving off a feeling of being a handsome young master. It's quite fitting, as the old saying goes. People rely on clothes, horses rely on saddles, and dogs run happily with bells. Wenlan muttered, and it was also very comfortable to wear. After leaving the room, Wenlan began to wander around. Some disciples were taken aback when they saw a child like Wenlan, but they quickly bowed and respectfully said, "Senior uncle." When each disciple saw Wenlan's attire, just as Wenlan was about to pass by, he quickly bowed and whispered, "Master uncle." Even called Master uncle. Until Wenlan walked about 10 steps past him, the disciple would continue to do his own thing. This situation instantly satisfied Wenlan, who had always been low-key, with great vanity. In a past life, I lost myself amidst the sound of handsome boys. At this moment, he understood why people are full of greed for power. Just being a martial uncle is enough to satisfy one's vanity. What if one becomes an elder or a leader? Wenlan dare not continue to think at this point. He doesn't want to, but his three-legged cultivation doesn't allow him to think recklessly. Wenlan still understands the 4 words self-awareness. It was getting dark. Wenlan came to the canteen and had a hard dinner. Thinking of Yun Tianqing in the room, she took 2 more mantou and a bowl of tofu and cabbage and left. Don't underestimate this thing, we need 3 spirit stones. Returning to the room, Wenlan pushed open the door and was taken aback because he saw Yun Tianqing notice that the door was open. He quickly put something into the storage ring. Suction, Wenlan sniffed and said, "Damn it. Meat." Wenlan's eyes lit up, he was so familiar with this oily smell. Wenlan threw the food on the table and ran to Yun Tianqing, shouting, "All right, I was worried that you might be hungry and bring you food. You really eat alone." "What? What's eating alone?" "I don't know." Yun Tianqing's expression was a bit unnatural, and she didn't dare to look directly at Wenlan. She lifted her eyelids and looked at the ceiling, with a face that I didn't know. "Still pretending to be a grandson, you still have oil on your mouth." Yun Tianqing quickly reached out his hand to wipe and looked down, there was no oil. "Oh no. Don't admit it to yourself." Yun Tianqing panicked. He really didn't expect Wenlan, at such a young age, to deceive him. "You really eat alone. Hand it over quickly." "I won't eat too much, I'll just eat my 3 spiritual stones." "Hurry up." Wenlan grabbed Yun Tianqing's collar with angry hands and shook him wildly. All right, stop shaking and you'll spit it out." Yun Tianqing quickly begged for mercy, waving his hand. 3 roasted ducks, 1 roasted chicken, 5 pig trotters, and 2 sweet and sour crucian carp appeared on the table. "I originally wanted to tease you, but I didn't expect you to be so clever." I greedily ate a pig's trotters and surprisingly smelled them all at once. Wenlan looked at a table of meat in confusion and said, "Where did you get so many delicious foods?" Yun Tianqing looked proud and said, "Beginner disciples cannot go down the mountain. I am a disciple who can go down the mountain, and of course I bought it from the bottom of the mountain. To celebrate your entry, and with the fact that we got along so well, I went to buy it when you went out this afternoon. Hehe, how are you doing? Did the food in the cafeteria taste good just now? Yun Tianqing looked at Wenlan with a despicable expression, and even let out a few sly smiles. Wenlan gritted her teeth and looked fiercely at Yun Tianqing, saying, "You just looked at me at noon and ate like swallowing medicine. You even asked me to go to the cafeteria to eat when I bought dinner at night. Now that I'm full, you're taking out so much meat for me. Son thief, you're quite good at playing." Yun Tianqing felt a little uneasy when he saw Wenlan's face full of unkindness. He smiled apologetically and said, "Hehe, isn't this senior brother considerate of you? You fart. You're just afraid that I'll grab some meat from you, so you deliberately waited for me to eat enough and took it out. Dog thief, look at your fist. I'll go, don't slap me in the face. Dare to run. Look at your fist. Ah." 5 minutes later, Yun Tianqing covered his face and gritted his left eye, which was so blue that it hurt him. He hissed and said, "Junior brother, you must have been too aggressive. Fierce. I can't have you playing." Wenlan chewed on the pig's trotters and couldn't clear her mind. In his life, he could have said that he was very frugal. Eating meat was also meat. Since his parents left, he rarely ate meat, only occasionally catching 2 rabbits to eat in that unsightly trap. Eating meat like this, the last time was in a past life. Wenlan chewed on the pig's trotters and said, "Unfortunately, there's no garlic. If you don't eat meat and garlic, the aroma will be half as good." Yun Tianqing waved his hand and placed garlic in front of Wenlan, saying with a smile, "I didn't expect that we both have the same hobby when it comes to eating. I'll go." Bull. Wenlan's eyes lit up as she slammed the garlic onto the table and deftly peeled off a clove of garlic skin. It's still possible to peel garlic like this. Yun Tianqing was dumbfounded at the thought, as it was a method he had never thought of before. Follow me and you'll have something delicious to eat in the future. Chapter 008. Forging. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After finishing their meal, the two of them lay in bed. So far, Wenlan still couldn't believe that she had started practicing immortality. If someone had told him about cultivating immortality in his past life, he would have to take a deep breath of phlegm and curse him with a brainless remark. But now the flying sword, spirit talisman, and storage ring all appear in front of me, making me sigh. However, the exhaustion of this day quickly led him to fall asleep. After an unknown amount of time, Wenlan couldn't help but open her eyes when she heard the piercing sound of the bell and saw a yellow talisman shining at the head of the bed. Ha! Wenlan yawned and reached out his hand to press on the yellow talisman, and the sound of the bell disappeared. Standing up and watching Yun Tianqing fall asleep on all fours, his eyes filled with envy, but he had no choice but to work hard as he embarked on the path of cultivating immortality. Walking to the waterfall next to the disciples' room with toiletries, holding a basin and placing it at the edge of the waterfall, using the water flow from the edge to collect some water and start brushing teeth and washing face. After tidying up, he walked out of the room and looked at the teleportation array next to him, hesitating for a moment before turning around and choosing to take the bridge. After all, yesterday's dizziness was even more severe than in my previous life. Arriving at Tai Palace from a long distance, I saw Zhonglian sitting at a stone table sipping tea, his eyes staring absent-mindedly into the distance, unsure of what he was thinking. Wenlan followed Zhonglian's gaze and thought for a moment, only to find that it was in the direction of the rolling cloud platform. Wenlan walked forward and bowed, saying, "Good morning, master." Wenlan's arrival woke up Zhonglian and he looked up and down at Wenlan, saying, "Not bad, it looks quite suitable to wear." "Master, what are we practicing today?" Wenlan asked curiously. "The foundation of sword casting is the most important. Your roots and bones are very clean and have not been tempered with true qi, which is good. I have decided not to let you touch the true qi for the time being, and to exercise your bones first. This is the most important and beneficial for your future cultivation. Wenlan was somewhat disappointed when she heard that she couldn't cultivate true qi, but she quickly adjusted her mindset and bowed, saying, I'll all listen to my master's arrangements. Well, you come with me. Zhonglian took Wenlan to a remote place next to Tai Palace. Wenlan didn't expect that there was actually a room here, and there was a blazing fire burning next to it. And the strangest thing is that the warm winter and cool summer Taoist robe did not regulate the temperature, which made Wenlan sweat profusely quickly. At the moment when Zhonglian pushed open the door, Wenlan felt a heat wave hitting her face. She was just sweating just now, but now she's sweating like rain. Following Zhonglian inside, I found a lot of ore and iron in the room, especially the iron block on the left side that almost reached the roof, filling almost half of the room. Zhonglian frowned slightly when he saw these iron blocks and said, why are these iron blocks even more than double? The iron blocks that Xianming entered. But he didn't pay too much attention either. Zhonglian walked up to a platform, picked up the hammer with his right hand, and pointed his left hand at the distant iron block. With a suction of true energy, the iron block fell into Zhonglian's hands. With a flick of his hand, he threw the iron block into the fireplace, picked up the pliers on the side, took a few breaths, and used the pliers to clamp the iron block out of the fireplace. From now on, you need to watch carefully, see every drop of my hammer, see my technique and body shape. Yes, master. Wenlan saw that Zhonglian was teaching herself something and dared not slack off at all. Ding 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 ding, as Zhonglian dropped the hammer, the originally red iron block became thinner and longer, and the speed of the drop became faster and faster. Wenlan's eyes were fixed on Zhonglian's technique and figure, and as she watched, she began to simulate in her mind. Quickly, the iron block in Zhonglian's hand formed a sword blank. Zhonglian stopped his movements and asked, did you see my technique clearly? I see it clearly, Wenlan nodded solemnly. This is the first step in forging a sword. Shaping. What I am doing now is the second step. Annealing. Soon, the originally bright red sword blank was no longer as red, and the temperature was not as high. Next is the third step. Cold forging. Cold forging requires using a small hammer to strike and shape the sword, making the body straight and the back of the mouth symmetrical. As he spoke, he began to strike the sword body, which was visible to the naked eye as it transformed from a rough shape. It cannot be completed in a few days to forge a good sword, and it takes decades to forge a divine weapon. After cold forging, there are 7 steps. Filing, applying mud to the blade, quenching, secondary cold forging, sharpening the sword, making sword sheaths, and making sheath handle accessories. Only when all of the above is completed can a sword be cast. And currently, all you need to learn is cold forging. Do you remember the actions I did just now? Remember, Wenlan nodded and said. You come next. Zhonglian moved away from his position. Wenlan picked up a piece of iron and threw it into the stove. She watched as the iron turned red after being burned, and then used pliers to clamp it out and place it on the platform. His face changed as he picked up the hammer with his right hand, because the weight of the hammer was actually 10 pounds. But still didn't say anything, just start forging as I just remembered. 1. 2. 3. For as time passed, the sweat on Wenlan's body was like rain, and her Taoist robe became even more soaked. Her right hand began to become numb, but she still persisted. Finally, the iron block turned into a sword blank in Wenlan's hand. Wenlan breathed a sigh of relief and placed the sword blank on a nearby platform, releasing her hammer grip and vigorously swinging it. Zhonglian stood there silently without any words, just watching quietly, but with a hint of satisfaction on his face. When the sword blank cooled down, Wenlan started cold forging again and gradually a real sword blank appeared in front of her. Wenlan looked at this sword blank with some joy. It was her first sword blank. Not bad, it seems you remember very well. Next, I will give you the first trial. Zhonglian nodded and pointed to the iron blocks piled up on the side, saying, I will make all of these into sword blanks within a month. Clang and clang, Wenlan stared at these iron blocks in amazement, and the hammer in her hand hit the ground directly. I chow. Within a month, will all be made into sword blanks. Master, why don't you still kill me? There's no need to torture me to death. Wenlan wanted to cry without tears. This house needs to be at least 50 square meters high and 3 meters high. Among them, 20 square meters of iron blocks are all made into sword blanks. This gives him 3 months to try. Although the forging time of a sword blank is not long, human physical strength is limited. Stop talking nonsense. If you want to do it, you can do it. If you finish it within a month, I'll give you a gift as a teacher. If you can't do it, the punishment will be twice as much as these iron blocks. After finishing speaking, Zhonglian left. Wenlan knelt weakly on the ground, her face full of grievances, and finally shouted up to the sky, "Oh my goodness! This is playing with my rhythm." At this moment, Chongguang in the distance of the forging workshop heard a mournful cry and showed a satisfied smile. Stinky kid, you were crazy at first. It's not too late for a gentleman to seek revenge for 10 years. Seeing how painful you are, I found so many iron blocks last night and it's worth it. Chapter 009. Task Completion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the end of the day, Wenlan looked at the scattered sword blanks and then at the piles of iron blocks piled up in the mountains, saying, dragging his tired body to the teleportation array, although nauseous and uncomfortable, he really didn't want to walk at all. Entering the teleportation array, he muttered, sword dance ping. After feeling the sky spinning and the earth spinning, Wenlan opened her eyes and didn't feel as nauseous and uncomfortable as she had imagined. Wenlan thought for a moment, maybe it was the first time she didn't adapt before vomiting. Dragging his tired body back to the room, Xianjian was not in the room, so tired that he didn't even eat. He lay on the bed and began to sleep soundly. The next day, the chime sounded, and Wenlan opened her eyes wearily to close it, then felt a sharp pain in her right arm. Lying in bed and looking at the ceiling gave him the idea of whether or not to escape the Qionghua Sect. But it was quickly rejected, for no other reason, just to be able to realize the dream of flying a sword in a previous life. Standing up and looking at Xianjian, who was sleeping soundly on the side, envy was almost overflowing in his eyes. However, it's still necessary to go. After washing up, use the teleportation array to come to the Tai Palace. At this time, the Tai Palace is very quiet, with occasional insect calls coming from time to time. Wenlan took off her clothes before coming to the forge and walked into the forge to start the day of forging. Until the third day, Wenlan's right arm couldn't be lifted anymore, so he started forging it with his left arm. Although it was slow, it could still be formed. 28 days have passed like this when, accompanied by the sound of forging iron, Wenlan sat on the ground exhausted, and the iron blocks in the room had all turned into sword blanks. With the final impact molding, the belief that had been hanging on Wenlan finally disappeared, and the task was completed. Wenlan lay on the ground and began to fall asleep. Zhonglian, who was resting in his own room, couldn't help but frown when he heard the continuous sound of forging, and stood up to go to the forging workshop. The scene of opening the door surprised him slightly, and the iron blocks inside the house were piled up with dense sword blanks. In fact, Zhonglian just wanted to test Wenlan's potential. These iron blocks were too difficult for beginners in a month, even his first disciple Xianming took a month and 10 days to complete. And the number of iron blocks is also slightly less than that of Wenlan. Unexpectedly, Wenlan has already completed it. Looking back, Wenlan was already lying on the ground, sleeping soundly, not even knowing that she had pushed the door in. Hee. Not bad, not bad. Zhonglian smiled with satisfaction, twirling his beard and constantly admiring. Seeing Wenlan sleeping so soundly, he couldn't bear to disturb him. He reached out his hand and a long sword flew out of the sword box behind him. The sword gradually grew to be 1 meter wide. Zhonglian reached out and used his true qi to lift Wenlan up and place him on the sword. With a wave of his giant sword, he took Wenlan back to his disciple's room. However, at this moment, the distant heavy light frowned and said, "It's really done. No, we have to think of another way to tidy up this bastard." The next day, Wenlan finally woke up to the sound of the bell chime. Subconsciously, she closed the chime and habitually woke up. After washing herself with a basin, she suddenly froze. It seemed like it was done yesterday. Wenlan suddenly felt confused and quickly ran to the teleportation array to reach the Tai Palace. Quickly walked to the gate of the forging workshop. "No need to look, you finished it yesterday," Zhonglian stood on the sidelines. "Master." Wenlan saw Zhonglian's eyes brighten and quickly ran over excitedly, saying, "Master, I have completed it. I have completed it." "I already know," Zhonglian said excitedly. "Next, I will teach you Qionghhua's mind technique and forging techniques." "Thank you very much, Master." Zhonglian nodded and his right hand became a sword finger. The sword finger emitted a faint golden light and quickly touched Wenlan's eyebrows. Wenlan felt a lot of knowledge emerging in her mind, so she quickly closed her eyes and slowly realized it. Wenlan involuntarily sat cross-legged on the ground, holding Yuan Shi and slowly moving according to the newly acquired mental method. Soon, Wenlan felt the energy around her constantly entering her body through her pores, and after running for weeks, it slowly stayed at the dantian. The aura slowly changed from the size of a fingernail to the size of a fist, but no matter how much it absorbed the spiritual energy from outside, the aura could no longer be absorbed. "Okay, your cultivation can only absorb so much at the moment." The sound of Zhonglian came to Wenlan's ears, causing her to stop moving and open her eyes, only to find that the already dark sky was now bright. "The qualifications are indeed good," Zhonglian nodded as he looked at Wenlan with satisfaction. Being able to perceive qi within 2 hours and condense it into shape at an extremely fast speed can be said to be a genius. However, when Wenlan heard these words, she was not happy. Instead, she frowned and said, "Master, since I can gather true qi, why can't I continue to absorb it?" Zhonglian explained, "The qi you are currently absorbing is only absorbing, but it is not your true qi yet. You need to go through countless trials to condense it into the size of a nail cap, and then absorb the surrounding air again. This process goes back and forth, and only when the concentrated true gas reaches the saturation level of your stage, can you burst out with a burst of energy before truly entering the refining phase. It's a bit troublesome." Wenlan pursed her lips, because in his previous feeling, he clearly felt that the qi in his body was not his limit, at least he could absorb twice as much. "It seems that you have also noticed that each stage is divided into 4 situations. Early stage, middle stage, late stage, peak, or in other words, perfect. You need to break through the initial stage before entering the middle stage, and cycle back and forth. But don't be too eager for quick success and instant benefits, eager for speed but not achieving it. The path of cultivating immortals is inherently against the sky, with difficulties and obstacles. Once a demon appears, it may be difficult to walk out." "Yes, I understand," Wenlan nodded and said. "Alright, I'll let you rest for 2 days. 2 days later, it's still Xianxia. Come here to find me." "Yes, I comply," Wenlan ran back happily. True qi. That's really angry. Wenlan is so happy. He now feels that the hardships he suffered a while ago have not been in vain. Returning to the room, Wenlan saw Yun Tianqing stealing his sauce elbow. Suddenly, she pushed open the door, which scared Yun Tianqing so much that she almost choked. I didn't steal because since the last time we had a meal together, Wenlan has given Yun Tianqing 200 spirit stones every month to help her go down the mountain to buy food, but she cannot eat alone every time. But Yun Tianqing doesn't have a long memory, he is always caught and beaten up by Wenlan. This time, Wenlan didn't even look and immediately sat cross-legged on the bed. Yun Tianqing saw that Wenlan was not right, and then he understood the mental technique that Zonglian had given him. Without disturbing him, he picked up his sauce elbow and walked outside. Put the sauce elbow there before going out. Wenlan, who closed her eyes, said softly. Yun Tianqing suddenly froze and smiled apologetically, saying, "Let me taste the taste for you." "Hee, I'll go out right away." He then left with his sauce elbow on the table, feeling disheveled. Chapter 010. Past Events of Qionghhua's Mission. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After acquiring the mind technique, Wenlan began to hone her true qi. Although she knew the method, the first step was difficult. However, Wenlan used the simplest method. Grinding disc. Divide the true qi into 3 channels, with 2 small amounts of true qi rotating rapidly like a grinding disc. Roll the 3rd channel back and forth, making it more compressed and pure. After the completion of the 3rd true qi, hone the other 2 true qi. As time passed, Wenlan finally successfully extracted the first round of true qi. That is to say, he is already in the early stage of his cultivation period before he even starts. When Wenlan opened her eyes and found that it was already dark, Yun Tianqing was sitting on the bed, bored and buttoning her nose. "Oh, wake up." Yun Tianqing casually rubbed his nose-picking fingers against his clothes. "I didn't expect it to take so long, it's already dark. Fortunately, today is already the 2nd day." Wenlan looked at Yun Tianqing dumbfounded and said, "Are you saying I've been sitting here motionless for 2 days now?" "Yeah, I understand you. My first time practicing was like this, I forgot to eat and sleep." At this moment, Wenlan's stomach was in line with the matter and she made a protest sound. "Come on, I specially bought some wine today to celebrate your official entry into the immortal path." Yun Tianqing sat up and walked to the table, waving his hand. A series of delicious dishes appeared on the table. Wenlan also sat across from the table. Yun Tianqing took out 2 wine glasses and poured them full, saying, "Come on, have a toast." "Come on." The 2 clinked their glasses and drank at once. Za. Wenlan licked her lips and frowned slightly. The wine smelled very fragrant, but it was really far from the wine of her past life. It's not spicy at all, and the alcohol content is outrageously low. Speaking of past lives, it seems that there hasn't been a bottle of wine that wasn't blended with alcohol, right? Thinking of this, Wenlan nodded and said, "The world is still better, it's all made from food. It's not like in the past, it's all about technology and hard work." The 2 of them pushed cups and changed cups and drank until late at night. Before Wenlan could do anything, Yun Tianqing's face was already flushed and he couldn't even speak fluently. "Brother, when I say something to you, you must listen," Yun Tianqing said with drunk eyes. "You say," Wenlan took a sip of the wine and said. "After mastering the swordsmanship of the Qionghua sect, be sure not to pass the moment illusion realm test." Wenlan looked at Yun Tianqing in confusion, because he had told Yun Tianqing a long time ago that he had not passed through the moment illusion realm and would only go after entering the qi refining period. The moment of fantasy realm is the entry-level standard of the Qionghua sect. It can be said that if passed, it is a disciple of Qionghua, and if not passed, it is not. I'm telling you, don't tell anyone. Yun Tianqing carefully looked around and lowered his voice. "In a few years, something big will happen in the Qionghua sect, and life will be ruined." "So serious?" Wenlan's heart tightened and she quickly asked, "What's going on?" "You should know that senior brother Xianxiao and Suyu have been practicing double swords, right?" "Well, I heard senior sister Suxin mention it a few times, but she didn't go into detail. The name of that pair of swords is Shiha, while the name of Yin is Wangshu." These two swords were made by the 3 generations of leaders of the poor Qionghua sect who worked hard to find rare treasures from all over the world. And the host requirements are also very strict, requiring individuals from both the Yang year, Yang month, Yang day, and Yang hour, as well as those from the Yin year, music, Yin day, and Yin hour, in order to cultivate. The purpose of cultivating these 2 swords is for one thing. What is it? Wenlan saw a clear and unusually serious expression in Yun Tianqing's eyes, which were originally drunk and hazy. She couldn't help but become serious herself. The demon realm. The demon realm. Wenlan frowned slightly. He is both familiar and unfamiliar with the word demon, which means he has never seen a monster before when he comes to this world. Familiarity comes from reading many novels and anime in my past life, such as Cat Ear Girl, Fox Ear Girl, Dog Ear Girl, and so on. But he also knew that demons, like humans, have good and bad qualities, so he was not so resistant to the demon race. Not bad. According to legend, there is a place where the sky shines on the top of Mount Everest in Kunlun. That is the legendary path to immortality. If you can pass through it, you can fly immortals in the daytime. It's just that there is abundant spiritual energy, stirring each other up, and it's not something that can be approached by one person's power. So Daoyin Jinren thought of using the method of raising swords with people. All things are divided into yin and yang give birth to all things. If one cultivates a pair of male and female swords and forms a sword pillar with tremendous spiritual power, soaring straight into the clouds until the sky shines, then all members of the sect can abandon their physical bodies and become immortal bodies. But relying solely on the double swords and the spiritual energy of the entire Kunlun Mountains is not enough, so their target has hit the head of the demon realm. The demon realm is not the same as the human realm, they are divided into many caves or barriers. The 20th generation leader, Daoyin Jinren, observed the celestial phenomena at night and discovered that there was a demon realm that approached the Qionghua sect every 19 years, containing powerful spiritual power. Wenlan was somewhat silent upon hearing these words, her fingers lightly tapping on the table in contemplation. These words sound good, but there are 3 questions inside. The first one. To become an immortal, you need the spiritual energy of the entire Kunlun Mountain. Not to mention anything else, there are 8 sects in Kunlun Mountain. If the Qionghua sect successfully plunders the spiritual energy, the other 7 sects will definitely not do it. The so-called heaven and earth are blessed because of the existence of spiritual energy, and the cultivation of spiritual energy cannot be formed overnight. The spiritual energy of the entire Kunlun Mountains has been continuously cultivated by all the disciples of the 8 schools for so many years, and there are only 2 possibilities. Firstly, the spiritual essence of Kunlun Mountain is too deep, to the point of infinite depth. Secondly, the Qionghua sect dare not take action to plunder the entire spiritual energy of Kunlun Mountain. If they do, the other 7 sects will definitely unite to attack the Qionghua sect. At that time, the plan to ascend to immortality was delayed, and even if the resistance within the sect was successful, it would still result in heavy losses. Wenlan's inner thoughts tend to lean towards the latter. This is just a matter of cultivating immortal sections. There are many villages below Kunlun Mountain. If there is a problem in Kunlun Mountain, none of these villages will be able to escape and they will all die. The second question. Whether it's snatching the spiritual energy of Kunlun Mountain or the spiritual energy of the demon world, there is one result. Life is ruined. He doesn't believe that in Chinese mythology, there are those who simply want to ascend to immortality and become immortals through slaughter. In his past life, even if he was at the level of Long Outyen, he had to walk up to the ranks of immortals step by step in his reading of novels, opening and closing, but they all went up step by step. The third question. As Yun Tianqing said earlier, this method of ascending to immortality is a different path, but can one ascend to become a deity without going through tribulations? Why does it sound like illegal immigration? Not to mention anything else, in my past life, at most one person who illegally crossed the border while reading news was a ship, and the chances of discovering it were very high. This is a person from a certain sect. At least a few thousand people are needed. Perhaps only 1 or 2 people who illegally crossed the border may succeed, or it's just a possibility. Are you really blind as a fairy when you smuggle people from a sect? Can you succeed? Pillow higher, there's everything in my dream.